Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so this topic is a little bit more plain, but I think you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. With all the exoplanets, suns, comets, and all the celestial bodies, especially with the way Scripture dictates what Earth is and how it's formed and everything, the rocket being seen hitting what is some kind of a dome top or satellite we couldn't see, something or another. And all the seemingly strange features our reality feature is. I think most of us, even in the educated fields, can say openly, without hesitation, Earth, by definition, is not a planet. And I think this is going to be considerably shorter. I have less media. I had decided to do this instead of my Shadow Person documentary. I may just do that tomorrow night, but I'm trying to work up my views to where every video I do has like 200 views before I post the newer documentary. That's kind of the system I'm working on. But unfortunately, my last video has not really gotten as many views yet as I had hoped it would. But it's the last one in the single two-digit range, so I'm very happy to bring you a new video. Ladies and gentlemen, when you say Earth is not a planet, there are so many different ways you can carry this. It is ridiculous. I mean, Pluto and like two other planets were kicked out of our definition range. If you go back to Scripture and they talk about the firmament above and the firmament below the firmament, and how there is water above the firmament, and all kinds of different things, go into the sciences and the vacuum of space and the non-vacuum and everything else. And what's really interesting when I get into the scientific stuff right here, astronomers in Prague actually said, and I think it was 2009, that Earth was not a planet, and yet that is not actually filtered down to the rest of us, which I find to be very, very, very fiddly, that the place we live, breathe, work, and play is now considered not to be a planet, which means the dome and pretty much everything else would have to almost be completely known about in those circles for them to say that we are not a planet. We're like some kind of Truman Show reality place where everything we have in Earth is pretty much designed to be like some kind of sound stage for another race. I very much believe in at least some of the Bible stuff. I've always said I believe in the planets and stuff, but I also said that I did not believe that Earth was the same as, Mars and the rest of these planets. And I have my very humbling honesty into why that is, and that Earth is absolutely different. Although by God's design or alien, false beings of God, all sorts of fallen angel stuff, doesn't matter. Earth is not a planet. And the very science proves that theory, ladies and gentlemen. When you look into the flat Earth stuff, even if you're halfway into it or halfway out of it, you will see definition by definition as to why Earth is not a planet. And why even top astronomers, ladies and gentlemen, have said Earth is not a planet. Now, I have a little bit for you. Not a lot, but I think what I have is humbling. So without further ado, let's get into what it is and what it isn't. I understand that not all these photos show the flat Earth, and I apologize. But you got to go with the sources that God gives you and that God brings before you. So please be patient. Alright, 1 second, folks. Hang on. Getting hacked or something. Alright, so. It's coming from Planet Waves Weekly. August 24th. I'm not sure what date, but according to this, it was 2006. So this was a while ago. Coming out of Prague. They're talking about the International Astronomer Union, IAU. General Assembly had yet another surprise outcome as astronomers voted overwhelmingly that Earth is not a planet. As always, folks, you decide. Now, I'm not going to go into all of this because it talks about a lot of different details, and there's another piece, another site that I found that actually describes what a planet is and isn't a lot easier. But this basically said, we're just following the laws of science, said Prof. Mellon Peabody at Yale University Bush Observatory announced the vote at a hastily convened news conference. We worked very hard to come up with the definition of a planet that was scientifically consistent with everyone agreed upon. We feel we've done our work well, and that we will be vindicated by history. There were several discussions, points on Earth issue. First, it was establishment that no scientist discovered the Earth. No record of it could be found in any planetary dialogue. And after searching the night sky for many years, no scientist has seen it through a telescope. Simple facts, but okay. We tried looking through both ends as well. Dr. Carl Zeiss, University of Akobaji, Plant Science Department. It was long and fruitless search. We even tried looking during the day when the light was better. So you get the idea. They're basically just going off and saying, it's not out there, it's over here, so we don't really view it as a planet. But it's kind of funny the way they make these points, ladies and gentlemen, and there's a bunch of other things here. I'm not going to go into this because it gets into some, unhappy details and things that I really don't want to point out at this point. But as you can see from the beginning, folks, they start nitpicking and making jokes about why it's not a planet, and then they basically hide their evidence with, oh, it's not outside, ha ha ha, it's not a planet, ha ha. When in fact, most of them probably get in their planes and fly around and go, it's flat, what is going on? And that's that. Or they've actually seen the South Pole and know about it, among many other things. So, here's one very funny. This isn't the one I wanted. 1 second, folks. 1 sec. So as you see from the beginning, folks, there's a lot of nitpicking as to the reality that they don't even know about. And before we go into whether or not, it is or is not a planet, I want to talk to you about the way they define a planet, because they didn't actually go into that in the last one. It's kind of funny because how can you say it's not a planet when you haven't used scientific proofs to vindicate it is or is not a planet? Well, here's how those same scientists, ladies and gentlemen, in that same Prague in 2006 conference defined a planet, which oddly enough you would have thought in Astronomers Daily or whatever that one was, they would have been able to define a planet, and they would have been able to scientifically sink the idea that it was or it was not an actual planet. And this is basically the definition of a planet right here. First, it's important to understand what the official definition of a planet is, at least according to the International Astronomer Union, IAU. In its own words, according to a vote in Prague in 2006, the Union has a defined definition of what a planet is. Now, use your flat Earth science, ladies and gentlemen, to come up with whether or not you believe that Earth is not a planet based on these ideas. A planet is a celestial body that A is in orbit around the sun. I'll go over the individual pieces in a minute. Just give me a sec. B has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes hydrostatic equilibrium, nearly round shape. And C has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. What it means is that a planet must move around the sun and not move around something else, that it's massive enough to have a round shape due to gravity, and that it will swoop up and dust or debris in its orbit as it moves around the sun. Let's be clear on something. The IAU definition of a planet is not without controversy. There's still strong contingent of people who say Pluto is indeed a planet, including a principal investigator of a spacecraft, New Horizons, to examine the world, Alan Stern. And then they basically go into why BBC talked about this conference and everything else. Now, they're talking about the moon here, but I want to go over the same inferences with you because I kind of think Earth is kind of in this category because we don't really know what it is and what it isn't, and it's kind of just placed here. This is about the moon, but I'm going to go and you can use the same idea on Earth, etc. The moon is not a unique phenomenon in our solar system. It is a sense that there are other planets that have satellites around them. Jupiter and Saturn have many dozens, referring to the IAU said in 2006, considering Charon a dwarf planet despite its large size to Pluto, etc., etc., etc. So it goes on and on. Basically, you got to read this for yourself, but basically, you know, they go into what a dwarf planet is. They go into what an exoplanet is. Well, we know by definition Earth is not an exoplanet because it doesn't have a big planet near it. We know it's not a comet. We know it's not a satellite because there's nothing bigger in front. You can go into definition whether or not you believe it's hollow and whether or not it might just be a sound stage of some kind where we're trapped and we can't go anywhere. That could actually be true. But I still believe there are some that can still get off no matter what Earth is or is not. So, by any major definition, ladies and gentlemen, Earth is not a planet. Now, I happen to go with Scripture on this because it basically says that we are not on Mars. We are not on Jupiter. We are not in anything else. And you can believe whether or not the Earth is the center of the universe or any number of things you want. But every major detail we come across, ladies and gentlemen, even in the sciences, proves beyond reasonable doubt that what we call Earth is in fact, ladies and gentlemen, not like the other bodies surrounding it. In fact, most believe that Earth is actually not even supposed to be in this orbit, and it was placed here along with the moon to study the tides, etc. Now, that goes back into the, the regular logic of the world. But I will also be covering the moon as a light rather than anything else. Also in the next documentary. And whether you want to say that the Earth is not a planet based on Scripture, based on scientific proof, based on historical evidence, based on flat Earth theories, based on flat Earth proofs, based on scientific proof, scientific investigative proof, because of the firmament, no firmament, that rocket hitting the dome was pretty convincing to me. Whether or not it hit the dome or something else, I don't know, but to me, that's all the proof I needed to say that Earth was not like the other planets, kind of like that old thing where they go, Timmy wasn't like the other kids. So, there's a lot on this, ladies and gentlemen, but I want you to kind of take from this and explore your own on this, because we can sit here and we can talk about scripture all night long, and we've done that in the other videos. But now you have scientific basis for what is and what is not a planet. Now you basically know what is and is not a planet. You knew before, obviously, you're intelligent people. You knew the difference between exoplanets, satellites, comets, suns, stars, and there's a difference between the suns and stars. Not all stars are suns, not all suns are stars. That's what I believe. Similar to it, sharks are a type of dolphin, but dolphin is not a type of shark. I believe I got that part right. So, it's up to you to really decide what you believe in the end, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm just going to go ahead and read those things over to you one more time so that you understand what this says. A planet is a celestial body that it is in orbit around the sun, has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes hydrostatic equilibrium, nearly round shape, and has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. So, if we ever discover that the sun is actually inside the Earth's orbit, like it's supposed to be in the Tropic of, I forget, Cancer, or I don't have the stats in front of me, the other one, Capricorn, we can eliminate the planet Earth from being a planet because its celestial body does not orbit around the sun. The sun is either in its, orbiting pattern, or it, orbits in a similar fashion, but not exact. And that's by the flat Earth sciences thereof. It has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces. I've seen things online in various videos, of course, before the internet even existed, where planets like Jupiter, especially in our solar system, fling massive objects away from Earth and away from the solar system, and even the sun has done this before. So I don't know exactly whether or not whether or not Earth has the sufficient force to do that, but I don't think it does. I think it's actually quite small, and I think that it has pull as far as an inertial force, meaning that convectional. Remember, it goes back to that one video where it says there are only two forces in the world, or in existence, convectional and inertial. And those create all the shape, sizes, and physics that you know of, including gravity. Even though the term gravity in the sciences is kind of loose, if you jump off a building, the force is still going to kill you. We're not talking about the force is not real. We're talking about the science behind the force is not real. That's what we've always said. But anyways, folks, this is coming from the IAU definition of planet, so this is pretty consistent with what it should be, folks. But as always, folks, Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so this topic is a little bit more plain, but I think you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. With all the exoplanets, suns, comets, and all the celestial bodies, especially with the way Scripture dictates what Earth is and how it's formed and everything, the rocket being seen hitting our definition range. If you go back to Scripture and they talk about the firmament above and the firmament below the firmament, and how there is water above the firmament and all kinds of different things. Go into the sciences and the vacuum of space and the non-vacuum and everything else. And what's really interesting when I get into the scientific stuff right here, astronomers in Prague actually said, and I think it was 2009, that Earth was not a planet. But unfortunately, my last video has not really gotten as many views yet as I had hoped it would. But it's the last one in the single 2-digit range, so I'm very happy to bring you a new video. Ladies and gentlemen, when you say Earth is not a planet, there are so many different ways you can carry this. It is ridiculous. I mean, Pluto and like 2 other planets were kicked out of our what is some kind of a dome top or satellite we couldn't see, something or another. And all the seemingly strange features our reality feature is. I think most of us, even in the educated fields, can say openly, without hesitation, Earth, by definition, is not a planet. And I think this is going to be considerably shorter. I have less media. I had decided to do this instead of my Shadow Person documentary. I may just do that tomorrow night, but I'm trying to work up my views to where every video I do has like 200 views before I post the newer documentary. That's kind of the system I'm working on.